Hey everyone, talking about common sizes of different fragrance bottles, including some visuals, which will show how each one looks, and going over maybe a little bit like what size do you actually need depending on how much you use, etc. So first, just kind of jump into the visuals. This is 10 milliliter. This wouldn't really, be considered a bottle or whatever, but I kind of wanted to show also because sometimes places this would be like travel spray sort of size. So that's that. 15 milliliter. As you can see, pretty small still, but cute little bottle. Usually there are not bottles that are this small, and that would more be in like, kind of a travel spray size thing, but occasionally you do see them. 30 milliliter. And I want to show a couple examples of some of these, especially the more common ones, so that you can see sometimes looks could be misleading and they can look different ways even with the same amount. So these are both 30 milliliters. You can see one of them's kind of like a little bit shorter, but then it's also thicker and stuff like that. So that is 30 milliliters, pretty small, but can actually go a surprisingly long way if you don't spray a ton. 50 milliliters, might as well take the cap off because that's so big. So small, but not like absolutely tiny or something, whereas the 30 milliliter ones really feel small. 60 milliliters, this really kind of shows how different these can come across. So these are all 60 milliliters. This one, sometimes you'll see this and it looks a lot bigger than it is, but if you actually look, you can see like around the edges, a lot of that is just the glass or whatever on the sides and the bottom, and a little bit on the top too. Versus this looks like it would be way smaller actually. I mean, it's taller, but like it just looks like, some tiny little kind of thing. Maybe it looks more like that in person than on a camera, but yeah, but they are the same amount because this doesn't have much like thick glass around it, and this too, same amount. So that is 60 milliliters. Next up, 100 milliliters. This is kind of what is most standard considered just like full size. And here's a couple different ways that can look. Typically it'll be, either kind of like vertical like that or like a pretty standard square, but sometimes you do get creative ones as well. 125 milliliters still doesn't look huge or anything, and to compare it, this is 100 and that's 125. And 150 compared to 125 compared to 100. So 150 doesn't even necessarily feel big, depending on how the bottle is done. For one like this, the Acqua di Parma Fico di Amalfi, it's done in a nice way where it's still like ergonomic and easy to hold. But if there was one where it made it like really thick square or like really tall or something, that might be a bit more inconvenient. So kind of gonna show a comparison of a few really quickly again. 10 milliliters versus 30. 30 versus 100. 50 milliliters versus 100. So as you can see, it doesn't always look like this doesn't necessarily look like it would be half the size of this, but it is in terms of the actual liquid by volume. And again, as mentioned, a lot of bottles will often look like it's more than it is because there's like thick, glass around the side, common in skincare and stuff like that too. Or sometimes, yeah, they can have a big cap. There's a lot of reasons that something can look bigger or smaller than it is in a fragrance bottle. So, in terms of how much you need, there's a lot of different purposes that fragrance can be used for. For example, if I think about my collection, there's some things that I really almost never wear, but I just like to I do wear this, so that's not one of them, but take off the cap and smell it. There are some where I only wear it in very, very specific situations. There are some where I'll wear it like only during, really specific weather, time of year, and that can vary depending on where you live in terms of how many days of the year are that hot or that cold, etc. There's some that I only wear around the house, but that I wear a lot. Some that I would only wear to like a formal occasion. You get the point. I mean, I'm sure you could have your own like that too. So the size really depends. For example, if you are getting one that you're really getting more just to like smell to yourself because you love the smell and not, to actually wear, the 10 milliliter should be completely fine. Granted, if you are not spraying it that often, hopefully it still has a cap, but the scent is not going to be as easy to smell. Just, this is pretty strong though. from smelling it like that. But yeah, if you're just buying it like something like that for yourself, you might still want a bottle for the visual collection purposes, but in terms of what you actually need, like that's what I would say. For something that you are going to wear, occasionally, like semi regularly, I would say, but not like definitely not daily, not even weekly, but maybe like once a month or more. A 30 mil can actually still last you quite a while, especially if the longevity and projection are decent and you don't have to, spray a ton. And 50 to 60 milliliter ones can last quite a long time in my experience. Even, for example, so this is 50, this is 60, ironically, again, because it just doesn't look like that. But this, I've decanted this multiple times, granted not a huge amount or whatever. This has such poor longevity and projection. I mean, one of the worst I can imagine, but it's very cheap. It's very like fresh. That's kind of what it's going for. So I like to spray it a lot during really hot weather, just like as a refresher. And I spray it, a lot because it goes away pretty quickly. I still have so much left of this. A 60 mil, again, that's what that was, kind of similar situation. 100 milliliter. This I probably wear more than any other scent. This bottle I have had for 1 year. I've decanted it, just a couple milliliters here and there or whatever, to give samples out to people several times, like at least 4 or so. And again, I wear it. I've worn this so many times and there's still so much left. I don't know, is it like maybe other people spray a lot more than I do or something, but there's certain ones that I do spray a lot of, like by the fireplace. I just spray that constantly when it's like winter weather, and I still have, over half that bottle left, and that's 100 mil. For 150 mil, personally, I wouldn't really usually buy this size because just 100 mil is so more than enough, and you still get the full picture of the visual package with it. Unlike, again, a 10 mil might be enough, but sometimes you really want to see like that nice bottle on display. So that's a valid reason to, want it. Fragrance can be a bit of a collecting thing. I don't like to think of it that way in terms of buying stuff I don't like the scent of, or I don't absolutely love the scent of. But so hopefully this was at least somewhat helpful in terms of kind of assessing what the different sizes are. And I think that it's better to, I always suggest sampling first, and also that way you can get a sense for how fast you go through, say, a couple milliliters. And if you see things that are like 3.4 ounce, that's 100 milliliters. 2 ounce, that's 60 milliliters. And you can always just Google like 3.4 ounce 2 milliliters and, get the difference there. But yeah, because frequently when I'm doing videos, at least I'll talk about, the price for a 50 mil or 100 mil. And that's kind of the size you get. When you get 100 mil, it's almost always going to be more than, or when you get a 50 mil, it's always going to be more than half the cost of 100 mil, because it's like just kind of with anything, when you buy in bulk, you get a better deal like per milliliter or whatever, but usually not significant enough to not be worth it. And for me, I think it's better to err on the side of getting sort of a somewhat smaller bottle, as long as it's not like some super limited edition batch or whatever, because also fragrances don't last forever unless they're like really stored perfectly. For me, they've lasted quite a while and I haven't really had many issues turning, but I have seen it with the cheaper ones, more likely to happen faster. But yeah, so it also like, you are at the risk of at some point like, it runs out and it goes bad because you got too big a bottle and it just was like sitting there so much. So one other reason though that you might want a bigger bottle is if you want to sell some decants of it or give it away, samples of it away to friends and other people in the fragrance community and stuff like that. But overall for me, 50 milliliters is completely adequate to last quite a while, and this will probably last me years. So yeah, another reason why I think, it can sound so expensive for some of these niche or Louis Vuitton or other fragrances for like a 100 milliliter bottle. And it is, don't get me wrong. And obviously like it's a privilege to be able to afford that in any capacity, but it's not quite as wild as it sounds in terms of the extravagancy of it, if you think about the fact that it can last for potentially for years for that price of like really regular wear. So yeah, if you have any thoughts on what size works best for you, let me know. But this is kind of how they all looked and how each one kind of tends to be used.